When HOA President Diane stole the engine from my classic Mustang, she had no idea who she was messing with. As an FBI agent, I know how to find stolen property. Now she's about to learn the hard way that picking the wrong neighbor can have serious consequences. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. I never wanted to live in a neighborhood with a homeowners association. But when the FBI transferred me to their Dallas field office, housing options were limited. The small house on Maple Street seemed perfect, close to work, affordable, and in a quiet area. What I didn't realize was that I'd soon meet Diane Morrison, the HOA president everyone called Karen behind her back. My name is James Cooper. 10 years with the FBI had taught me patience, observation, and how to handle difficult people. I thought I'd seen it all until I met Diane. My first encounter with her happened the day after I moved in. "Excuse me," she said, appearing suddenly as I unloaded boxes from my truck. "Your grass is half an inch too tall. That's a violation." I looked at my lawn, then back at her. She stood with a measuring tape in one hand and a notebook in the other. Her blonde hair was cut in the classic Karen style, and she wore the uniform of Suburban Authority khaki pants and a polo shirt with the HOA logo. "I just moved in yesterday," I explained politely. "I'll take care of it soon. The bylaws state all lawns must be maintained at exactly 2.5 inches. You have 24 hours to comply or face a $150 fine." She handed me a printed notice and walked away before I could respond. Welcome to the neighborhood, I thought. Being an FBI agent doesn't leave much time for hobbies, but I've always loved restoring classic cars. My pride and joy was a 1967 Mustang that I'd been slowly rebuilding. It wasn't pretty yet, the body needed work, and I was in the middle of engine repairs. The car sat in my driveway, partially covered by a tarp. 3 days after moving in, I returned home from a long day of surveillance work to find another notice stuck to my door. Violation: non-functioning vehicle in driveway. Section 8, Paragraph 3 of HOA bylaws prohibits storage of inoperable vehicles. Remove within 48 hours. I called the number on the notice. Diane answered on the first ring as if she'd been waiting for my call. "Mrs. Morrison, this is James Cooper at 432 Maple. I got your notice about my car, but it's not junk. I'm restoring it. The bylaws clearly state." "I understand, but I'm in the middle of an engine rebuild. I need a few weeks, then it will be running again." "The rules apply to everyone, Mr. Cooper. If you need to work on your car, do it elsewhere." I tried reasoning with her, explaining that the car was valuable and that I had no other place to work on it. She wouldn't budge. "Fine," I said. "I'll move it to the garage temporarily." "See that you do," she replied, hanging up. That weekend, I cleared space in my garage and pushed the Mustang inside. The engine parts were spread across a workbench. I figured they'd be safe there while I focused on my current case at work. The following week was intense. We were tracking a money laundering operation, and I barely made it home each night before collapsing into bed. I didn't have time to check on my Mustang until Saturday morning. When I finally opened the garage, something felt wrong immediately. The tarp covering the car had shifted. As I pulled it back, my stomach dropped. The engine block I'd carefully removed and placed on stands was gone. So were the carburetor, transmission, and several custom parts I'd ordered from specialty shops. Someone had broken into my garage and stolen thousands of dollars worth of car parts. As an FBI agent, my first instinct was to search for evidence. I found faint tire tracks leading from my garage to the street. Someone had used a dolly to wheel out the heavy engine. There were no fingerprints, but they had left something behind. A small piece of paper that had fallen between the workbench and the wall. It was a receipt from Morrison Landscaping. Diane Morrison's husband ran a landscaping business. I called the local police first, as protocol required. While waiting for them to arrive, I installed a small camera in my garage, standard FBI equipment I had access to. Then I began watching the Morrisons' house down the street. The local police took my report but didn't seem optimistic about recovering the parts. "Car part thefts are common and hard to trace," the officer told me. "We'll keep an eye out, but don't get your hopes up." Little did he know who he was talking to. I'd spent years tracking criminals much smarter than whoever took my engine. This was personal now, but I approached it like any other case, methodically gathering evidence. I didn't tell the police about the receipt I'd found. That was my lead to follow. The next day, Sunday, I drove past Morrison Landscaping. The business was closed, but I noticed a large storage shed behind the main building. Through a window I could see lawn equipment but nothing automotive. Still, it was a place to start. Monday morning I called in a favor with a colleague who ran the license plate database. The Morrisons owned 3 vehicles: Diane's SUV, her husband Tom's truck, and a cargo van registered to the landscaping business. That evening, I watched as Tom Morrison returned home in the company van. He parked it in their driveway, but something about the way the vehicle sat caught my attention. It was riding low on its suspension, as if carrying something heavy. On Tuesday, I took a personal day from work. Once Diane left for her daily neighborhood patrol and Tom headed to a landscaping job, I walked to their house. Their teenage son was at school and the house appeared empty. The van was gone, but their garage door was slightly open, just enough to peek inside. What I saw confirmed my suspicions: car parts and tools arranged neatly on shelves. And in the corner, partially covered by a tarp, was what looked like my engine block. I could have called the police right then, but years of FBI work had taught me to gather definitive proof first. I retreated to my house and planned my next move. That afternoon, Diane knocked on my door. Her smile was tight as she handed me another notice. "Your trash cans were left at the curb 30 minutes past the allowed time this morning," she said. "That's a $50 fine." I accepted the paper calmly. "Mrs. Morrison, I've been meaning to ask, does your husband know anything about car engines?" Her smile faltered. "Tom? No, he's a landscaper. Why do you ask?" "I'm missing some parts from my garage. Expensive parts. I thought maybe he might have seen something." She stiffened. "Are you accusing us of something?" "Not at all," I replied. "Just asking neighbors if they noticed anything unusual." As she walked away, I noticed her immediately pull out her phone and make a call. She was worried. That night I set my trap. I placed a tracking device under the Morrisons' van, completely legal with probable cause in an FBI investigation, which this now was. Someone had stolen federal property, as my service weapon had been in the garage, though thankfully not taken. The next morning, I watched as Tom Morrison loaded something heavy into the van before driving away. The tracker showed him heading to a salvage yard on the outskirts of town. I followed at a distance, parking across the street as Tom spoke with the salvage yard owner. Through my binoculars, I could see them examining what was definitely my Mustang's engine. They were negotiating a price. I took photos with a telephoto lens, documenting everything. Then I called for backup. Within 20 minutes, 2 FBI colleagues arrived in an unmarked car. We approached just as money was changing hands. "FBI," I announced, showing my badge. "Step away from the engine." The look on Tom Morrison's face was priceless, pure shock followed by fear. The salvage yard owner immediately started claiming he didn't know the parts were stolen. "Mr. Morrison," I said calmly, "that engine and those parts were stolen from my garage last week. Would you like to explain how you came to possess them?" He stammered something about finding them by the curb on trash day. "In working condition? Worth thousands of dollars?" I asked. "And you didn't think to ask around the neighborhood if someone had accidentally thrown them out?" His story fell apart quickly. Back at the FBI field office, Tom Morrison confessed everything. It wasn't entirely his idea. Diane had been the mastermind. "She hated that car in your driveway," he explained. "Said it brought down property values. When you moved it to the garage, she still wasn't satisfied. She knew I had been looking for parts for my own project car, and she suggested I solve both problems at once." "Did she know you were planning to sell the parts?" I asked. "That was my idea. Money's been tight with the landscaping business. I figured no one would trace it back to us. And neither of you knew I'm an FBI agent?" His face went pale. "You're what?" I nodded. "Special Agent James Cooper. I work in financial crimes normally. Not theft. But I make exceptions." Tom put his head in his hands. "Diane never told me. She just said you were some guy who didn't respect the HOA rules." The local police took over the case, charging both Tom and Diane Morrison with breaking and entering, theft, and attempting to sell stolen property. The FBI stayed out of it officially, though my supervisor got a good laugh out of the whole situation. "Of all the houses to rob," he said, shaking his head. Diane Morrison was removed as HOA president pending her trial. The news spread quickly through the neighborhood, and suddenly neighbors I'd never met were stopping by to introduce themselves. "We've all wanted to see her taken down a notch," one elderly woman told me. "She's been terrorizing this neighborhood for years." My engine and parts were returned, though some were damaged. I got a nice insurance payout and used it to finish my Mustang restoration sooner than planned. 3 months later, both Morrisons pleaded guilty to reduced charges. Tom got probation and community service. Diane served 30 days in county jail and was ordered to pay restitution. A year has passed since then. I'm now the president of our neighborhood association, elected by neighbors who appreciated how I handled the situation. The first thing I did was simplify those ridiculous bylaws. Grass can now be up to 3.5 inches tall. Project cars are allowed as long as they're being actively worked on. And nobody gets fined for leaving their trash cans out a few extra minutes. The Morrisons moved away after their legal troubles. Tom sent me a letter of apology, explaining that he'd been under his wife's influence for too long. I believe him. My Mustang runs beautifully now. On weekends I often take neighborhood kids for rides in it. Some of the teenagers have become interested in car restoration, and I've started a small club where I teach them the basics. Sometimes in my line of work, it's hard to see justice served so perfectly. But in this case the system worked exactly as it should. And every time I start up that engine and hear it roar to life, I can't help but smile at the irony. The HOA Karen who thought she could intimidate the new neighbor never realized she'd picked a fight with the wrong federal agent. And the neighborhood is better for it.